Hey there, I am Lara. I am excited to welcome you to this live session about synthetic media, where AI meets content. Our hosts Victor, CEO at Synthesia, and Matthew, Senior Market Research Analyst at G2, will guide you through the exciting world of synthetic media and how it's changing the game for content creation. You'll learn about the trend of generative AI and synthetic media, and how it's being used to create content that's more accessible and impactful. And, in a nod to the topic of the webinar, I'd like to point out that this introduction was created entirely with AI technology. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into the world of synthetic media with Victor and Matthew. I wish you an informative and fun experience.
Thank you for that awesome introduction. Great to see everyone here. Super excited to host this session with G2. Today we got a jam-packed half an hour-ish. We're going to talk about a few different things. We're going to talk about how we define synthetic media. We're going to talk about how synthetic media is used today and how synthetic media will shape the future. The reason we're here today, of course, is because our awesome friends over at G2 just launched their new category called synthetic media. They've done a lot of awesome work on really trying to map out the industry, and we're going to talk through that today. With us here, we have Matthew from G2. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Victor, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Synthesia. And Matthew, I'll just let you introduce yourself before we move on to the next one.
I'm a senior market research analyst at G2. My focus area is AI automation analytics. I'm really excited to get this going.
Amazing. So as I quickly mentioned before, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about how we define synthetic media. Matthew's going to take us through that. Matthew's also going to talk a bit about how synthetic media is used today. As I'm sure everyone here is aware, the many different modalities AI is being used for content creation today. We'll dig a bit deeper into those. And last but not least, we'll discuss a little bit about how we think synthetic media will shape the future, particularly the future of work. But without further ado, why don't we just jump into Matthew talking a bit about how you guys at G2 actually define synthetic media.
Sounds good. Look forward to it. So G2, if we see in the next slide, we're thinking about synthetic media, but I think also it'd be helpful just to zoom out a little bit. So G2 is a place to go to find software, to find business software, to find the right tools for whatever use case you have, whatever problem that you're trying to solve. And through that, through comparisons that you make, through reports that we have, and other tools and technology, you can find the right software for what you're looking for. And so we've got 1,700 plus categories, over 100,000 products, and recently we just hit 2 million reviews. And so when we're thinking about this and what categories we have, we always want to make sure that we're keeping up to date and have the right categories and the right tools for what people are looking for and what they need. So in the next slide, we have some of the categories and some of the ideas behind what synthetic media is. And then through that, we'll see what exactly was potentially missing in our taxonomy and how we built out this new synthetic media category. So if we think about synthetic media, there's a number of different types. So here we have 4 types: images, voice, text, and video. But there's other types as well. Sometimes people use it for coding to generate different new code, for music, other ones as well. But these are the ones that we focused on originally and initially. And the basic idea is that you have some sort of prompt, some sort of input, and then as an output, you have these different types of media. And it uses AI to generate these different types of media. And so in the next slide, we can see some of the different categories on G2 that we had previously, which spoke around the issue, and it had different types of products, and these categories were certainly related to synthetic media, but they didn't quite cover it. They didn't quite capture and catch everything that we were looking for and that buyers were looking for. When they're thinking about generative AI, they're thinking about synthetic media, it was a little bit here, a little bit there, and so we wanted to consolidate. So text to speech, we had those tools and technologies that you could input text, and you could have as an output some form of speech, whether that's generated based on your own voice or other stock voices, and then video editing, so different tools and technologies to help you edit video, add elements, change different aspects, and then voice recognition, or some people would call it speech recognition. So you have the ability to have as an input your voice, And then as an output, some sort of text, something that allows that to be converted into something via the machine and via machine learning. And then finally, different photo editing tools and technologies. So you've got your photo, you want to add different lighting, you want to change the style, you want to, whatever it might be. We have those tools, you can find them, you can rate them and review them, but it wasn't quite there. It wasn't quite capturing all these new and trending types of tools that people are looking for, that people can use to solve their business needs. So in the next slide, we can see what we were thinking about when we came up with and we thought that we should have this synthetic media category. And so when we think about the category on G2, we have basic things that are necessary for this category and for categories as a whole. So we've got that definition. What is going on here with the category? What is the basic technology? What are the use cases? What are the products within that category? And then we also have the inclusion criteria. So what are those necessary components that a product needs in order to be part of this category? So we have 4 basic necessities that you need to have in order to be part of the category. So one of them is you need to have some sort of input, so some prompt that you're putting in, whether that's some text, whether that's your voice, whatever it is. And then as an output, you have that text, you have that audio, you have that video, etc. And then also it's important here that we're talking about tools and technology products for non-technical users. So there all are different types of tooling that can be used, that is used for developers, that developers use to add different generative AI capabilities into their workflow, into their tools, into their applications. But here we're talking about platforms, tools which are used by non-technical users. Another one is being able to export and share these creations with one's audience, with one's own team, whatever it is. These are things that don't just live in some platform, but they're shared and used throughout one's business workflow. Finally, and this is really critical and key, these tools are ethical by design. So what that means is they have different guidelines, they've got guardrails, they've got different terms of conditions, which show and which explain that the tool is not being used for nefarious purposes. It's not being used to create inappropriate content, to create what one might call deep fakes, so taking one's likeness and using it in ways which are not appropriate or not allowed or not being used without consent. So this idea of ethical by design is key, is critical, and is something which is a necessary component to be in this category. So in the next slide, we have the what does synthetic media use and how is it used today? So we're going to see throughout these next slides that the idea of synthetic media is something which has generative AI at its core. And so we can see in the next slide that the different tools are used for all sorts of different use cases. And so these use cases, as we said, are, for example, images. So you can see here that this creative, clever, cute Mona Lisa with a mohawk. And so this is an interesting a little use case where you can just add an element to an image using synthetic media, using generative AI. That could also, so this is taking an existing image and then adding some elements. It could also be something which is more de novo. So using a text prompt, using the technology, and then having as an output something which is totally new. So maybe you want to adapt a certain idea and add a style to it. You want to add some other components. You put it in the text prompt, and the world is your oyster. You can create all sorts of things. And so this is really helpful in different business use cases. So for example, you've got some products that you want to show off and show in different environments. So you can put those environments as a text prompt, add your image, add your product in all those different ways. You want to have maybe you got a real estate use case. So you want to add different elements within a property that you're showing or make the property that you're showing have certain elements to add a little bit of pizzazz. So these tools are going to be very helpful for that and going to allow you to do it very quickly, have non-technical users use the tools and get a lot of great results. The next one we have in the next slide is generated voice. So I've played around with a bunch of these tools and you can find a lot of really, really great use cases and a lot of great voices that sound really realistic. And so here too, as we said, so it could be a clone. So in some cases, you're cloning your own voice. So you're recording a script, you're recording some words, and then through that, you'll have the the software will produce as an output a voice based on your voice, or other times it's stock voices. But these stock voices are very good, very realistic, like we heard at the beginning of the show, something which sounds very, very human-like and can add different features, intonation, emotions, etc. And so this type of technology is very useful across all sorts of different areas. So if you want to, let's say, have a customer service bot, so it could be via chat, of course, but you can add this speech element, and you can have it so you'll call up a customer service representative, and at least in the initial stages, you can have it so that using this generative AI synthetic media technology, it can be used like that, so that you can speak and have a conversation with this type of conversational AI, and it could be a very pleasant experience. Another one as well with voice is that, let's say you've got some video content and you want to add some audio, you want to add some speech. So here too, you can add the speech, do it very quickly, and then localization-wise, you can do it in all sorts of different languages. It's a very easy, very quick, and very scalable way to use voice in whatever application that you have. So next, we have text, and this is the last one I'll cover before I'll hand it back to Victor. So text, this is huge in the news these days. Using text, you have a text prompt. Using large language models, the software is trained on a large amount of data, a lot of text data. And through that, you can have, in some cases, a conversation. In other cases, you put in a prompt and you get back text. And what this allows you to do is iterate at scale and create text, whether that's for your branding, you want to come up with a new slogan, you want to help with your SEO, you want to have some blog drafting that you need a little bit of help with. And so in those cases, also course writing, so you're writing a course, you want to have an outline, you need a little bit of help creating that course, drafting that course. So in all these cases, you can really have that help from the technology. And I think it's key and critical that it's the human using the tools, using it as a tool, and not some sort of replacement for humans. But with that tool, with that help, you can do a lot, and you can have a lot of great results if it's used in the right way. So that's what I've got for some of the use cases I've seen, some of the technology behind it. I'll pass off to Victor to discuss video and what he's seen in that space.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matt. I'm sure lots of you on the call here have tried out ChatGPT. It's really having a cultural moment, and I think it's just magical technology, right? I'm going to talk a little bit about AI-generated video, which obviously is something that's very close to us at Synthesia, very much in line with how these other AI tools work, right? The whole idea here is that you prompt the system with something very simple, which in our case is just a script, the text you want the actor to read out, and you get something out of the other end, which is much more interesting and creative. The way Synthesia works, for those of you who have not tried it out, is basically you go to our platform. We have the sort of video editing tools you can see here on the screen. You simply just type out the script. You can type your script in 75 different languages. Whichever language you type in is how the script's going to come out. And the way we do this is by creating these AI avatars, as we call it, right? That's also what we saw at the beginning of this webinar. The thing we're really passionate about is really just to make it easy for anyone to make video. But the way we want to make it easy for people to make videos is not by creating smaller cameras or better video editing apps. We're actually building technology that ultimately can replace the entire physical production process. I think our platform today is a great peek into that. You can create training, learning, presenter-led content without the need for studios, microphones, lights, all that stuff that otherwise really complicates video production. It's as easy as creating a PowerPoint slide, essentially. As we kind of progress on our AI technology, we'll be able to do a lot more kind of expressive type of content. So for those of you who've tried the product, you'll be aware that the avatars are great kind of instructors today. They're not amazing at storytelling, but I think by this year, we'll have avatars that can be more emotional. They'll be able to do more things. We'll have gestures. And as we kind of move up that graph of like how mature the AI technology is, we'll be able to create lots of different types of content. But before we maybe go further on that, why is it actually so interesting to generate video content? On the next slide here, we can see that video is just a critical part of any business in 2023. When you look at the online economy, it's really obvious that people want to watch and listen They don't want to read that much anymore, especially not if you're talking to the younger generation. This is something that I'm sure all of you are experiencing in your personal lives. I have to admit that even though I myself am quite an avid reader, nowadays when I want to learn something or I have a question, I'll usually actually pop it into YouTube before I'll go to Google. It is just a much better and easier and faster way of learning. I think we're still in the early phases of the video really becoming sort of video first. And I think all these technologies we've talked about so far will build towards an internet where video and audio will be the default UX instead of text. And I think we'll see a lot of this over the next 10 years. One thing that's also very interesting about these technologies, and I just kind of want to make sure that I get it in there, is also the combination of all these things. So AI video, AI images, AI-driven text, AI-driven speech. But once you kind of combine these, they also force multipliers in one another. So something that we're seeing a lot at the moment, for example, is people using ChatGPT to actually write the script for their Synthesia videos. So instead of you having to sit down and be the script writer and come up with a whole idea, just pop into ChatGPT, write me a video about how to avoid being phished if you're the employee of a big enterprise company, for example. And ChatGPT will actually spit out a script that's fairly good. Maybe you still need to edit it 20%, but then you actually have a final piece of content. So I think we'll really see, once these technologies really kind of get connected to one another, we're launching a GPT integration pretty soon, we'll really see the internet becoming a much more visual and interactive space than what it is today, especially in our work lives, which for most people today still are very text-driven and slide-driven. If we go to the next slide, some of the use cases for AI video today, if you go to the next slide again, really what we're seeing is that this technology is still fairly early, right? Anyone who goes to Synthesia will be able to see that. And for where the technology is at today, it's amazingly good for what I call instruction-led content. So what we're seeing a lot of our customers do is learning and training is huge. That could be technical trainings, compliance training, development, onboarding in very big companies. This has a huge impact, and Synthesia works amazingly well for that. We're also seeing marketing and sales, so content marketing, customer success teams, creating video content that helps their customers be more successful, product promos, demos, feature videos, all that type of stuff. It works really well for. That's of course because it's very easy to produce. It can be done by anyone in the organization who has created a slide before, which is more or less everyone. And of course, when something changes, which it does all the time, if you're a big business, even a small business, then you can just open up your video, you can edit the script, change some of the backgrounds, etc. And off you go, you now have a final piece of updated content. So this is very much what we're seeing right now. And we're just seeing our customers save a lot of money, a lot of time on using Synthesia while creating communication materials that are just so much more effective than the text or slides that they used to use before. As I mentioned earlier, as kind of the technology gets better and better, gets more expressive, I think we'll see this expand quite a lot. But for where we are today, these use cases really, really work fantastically well with Synthesia. And maybe to see a few examples of that. Yeah, maybe the next slide again. We pulled up just a few examples of some of the amazing customers that we work with. Bosch is a very, very large company, and they had a huge problem with overall just scaling their video content, right? That would cost them a lot of money, of course, but also just a lot of time and headaches. They knew that they wanted to do their trainings and internal materials in video because it worked so much better, but they just found it an almost insurmountable task to do for 16,000 employees all across the globe. Once they started working with us, they saw a 30% increase in learning engagement, which is huge, right? And this is very much about the shift from more kind of static formats like text to interactive and visual formats like video. They saw 70% savings in external video production, and they have more than 30,000 views for all of their web-based trainings, which is super cool. We also work with WPP. Some of you might know them as one of the biggest advertising agencies in the world. They have a huge program for keeping their employees up to date, especially with like the latest technologies. That's super important when you work in an agency. And they developed this huge program, which has been rolled out to more than 50,000 employees. Almost 12,000 hours content has been watched, and they've got super high scores on how much people like the content. And I think a big part of why people love it so much is because they were able to actually deploy these trainings in people's native language. This is a very global company. The last one that we highlight here is Teleperformance, which is a huge company. They have more than 380,000 employees all around the world. And they had big issues around the video production costs, and they had big issues about localization. So Teleperformance basically helps other companies solve their customer support needs. So you can imagine that they have to train a lot of agents on understanding their customers' products. What they saw after switching to Synthesia was 5 days saved per video created. That is huge, $5,000 in savings per video. And they've rolled out this in more than 40 languages, which is super cool. And I think they're a great example of a business that has really taken Synthesia in and is now using these AI-driven formats to just be much better at learning and education with their staff, which is very cool to see. Really using the fact that you can go back and edit the videos when something changes in your business, and making it sort of really an ingrained part of their workflow, which is really cool. How do we think synthetic media will shape the future? It's a good question, and I think everyone feels like we're still very early, even though a lot of progress have been made in the last couple of years. In a professional context, some of the things we think is going to happen is, first off, it's going to bridge the skill gap that are between people. So today, in many organizations, you might have one person who's really, or several people who are really good at copywriting, some that are really good at video production, some that's really good at audio production, and so on and so forth. And what synthetic media will be able to do is actually to go in, and for someone who might be an amazing copywriter, it can help them express themselves in video and audio content. Someone who may be an amazing video producer, but are not that good at writing a script for a video, they can now have the script written for them. And in this way, really just up-leveling everyone in the organization to be more productive, more effective, and able to communicate in much higher resolution than they otherwise would have. I think we still will have a huge need for true experts in all of these fields. This is definitely not a replacement. This is an enhancement. And I think that, as per the second point here, the collaboration between people and AI is going to be what's going to make companies really effective and even more competitive than they are today. We're seeing this already across the board. ChatGPT, for example, I'm sure a lot of you have seen on LinkedIn and YouTube and Twitter all the different fun ways people have used ChatGPT to make themselves more productive and produce more than they did before. With Synthesia, we're kind of seeing the same thing. But one thing I think is consistent across all of these tools is that if you just let them run sort of on autopilot, and you don't monitor or edit their work, it's just not that great. The people who will be able to create amazing video content are still going to be people who really understand storytelling, what works in a video, what doesn't work in a video. That doesn't really change. It just means that the playing field becomes more even, and that everyone kind of have a chance to create more kind of high resolution media. The last one is something that's very important to us here at Synthesia, which is ethical and explainable AI. So a lot of these systems are very powerful. They have the potential to be used for bad things. Bad actors will surely pick up these technologies just like they've picked up cars and smartphones and social media and so on. And we think that companies need to make a strong commitment to making sure that technology isn't misused. And this is something that's also reflected in G2's category. These technologies are powerful and companies should do what they can to sort of curb misuse. For us, what that means is a very strong focus on consent. We don't create avatars of anyone without their consent. And we also have quite strong content moderation, which means that we take a stance on what kind of content that you can create with our platform. And we think that in the future, companies are going to want to work with other companies that they can trust, both with their data, but also with their reputation, and that they are good and reasonable ethical actors in this space. And next slide. That was all we had for you for this time. I hope it was useful. Thanks a lot for Matthew for coming on here and explaining how G2 thinks about this category. There's a part of me that really feels like this is a bit of a watershed moment for our industry. We've been building for 5 years in this technology, and G2 and Matthew doing amazing work on really kind of mapping it and making it official really means a lot to me personally and for everyone in Synthesia. And I think it really signals the beginning of an entirely new set of tools that's going to make the world a much more creative and fun place, which is very, very cool. For those of you watching on the Synthesia website, you can scroll down a little bit and you can click the link to see the new category on G2 and explore it for yourself. Otherwise, thank you so much, Matthew, for coming on here. Really enjoyed listening to you and working with you on creating this category. And for the rest of you, I'll see you out there in cyberspace, make some awesome videos, and I hope to see you around both here on YouTube and also in our Facebook group. If you're not a member, make sure to jump in there and join us. Thank you, everyone.